気になるルフィの仲間だという二人の女。どうしてもわらわよりその二人の方が良いと申すのか。
俺のことは忘れろって言ってんだろ。おめえも諦めの悪い女だな。
すべて改めるぞ。待つのじゃルフィ。
Hey, my dear pirates. And in today's video, we're going to talk about building One Piece relationships. As we know, Eiichiro Oda already mentioned in an interview that he had no interest in bringing relationships between the members of the Straw Hats. But he also said that Luffy's mother was not that important to the work, but apparently that even changed his mind, and apparently he ended up introducing Luffy's mother in the manga. So could the same not happen with Luffy's possible relationships? And if it happened, how and with whom will our dear captain choose? Nami, Robin, or is it really the Empress of Serpents, Boa Hancock? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video, but first of all, go ahead and press the like button with all the power of your devil fruit. Already subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notifications bell. Okay, now without further ado, let's get to this epic video. And well, my dear pirate, everyone knows Oda always said he would never have romance in One Piece because the Straw Hats are all in love with the sea. The reason is obvious. There is no room in the work to develop passions and jealousy, eventual love triangles and dramatic arcs about the Straw Hats' love for each other or for the people outside the gang. So the most we have is either some frustrated relationship, possibly involving Sanji, or promises from couples for the epilogue of One Piece, like Usopp or Kaya, or even maybe Luffy with Hancock. On the other hand, a lot has changed in One Piece since its early years, and it's not impossible that Oda will be interested in incorporating more romance in the near future. Obviously, it can't be anything that gets in the way of the manga's narrative structure. These relationships can end up happening with a certain grace and comic content, but without much drama around the fact. After all, if we go back to Sanji's example, we see how Oda really has no intention of forming couples. He just likes to play around with these ideas. For the more conspiracy theorists, myself included, there are indications that Oda could take this course based on events we saw in the course of One Piece. First, we saw Nami say that Sanji's chivalry had risen in his esteem. In Dressrosa, there was a real flirtation between Sanji and Violet, even though it didn't go anywhere. Now in Todo Island, our stallion snatched Pudding's heart, but as we saw, this only served to destroy Sanji's heart in the end, and this ended up bringing another important scene to Sanji and Nami's relationship. After all, the way how thrilled she was to see her friend again struck me as much more like someone who has finally seen the person she loves return. In fact, if we stop to think about it, in Whole Cake Island, there were several scenes that brightened the lives of those who really believe in the relationship between Sanji and Nami, and personally, I confess that from this arc I noticed a chemistry between the two that I had never seen before. In other words, my dear sailor, if Oda really didn't want to introduce relationships into One Piece, for whatever reason, well, it seems that little by little he's been changing his mind, and I believe that this may have something to do with Oda's own life. Since recently in 2020, The Color Walk 9 was released in Japan, which is a book with a collection of illustrations from the One Piece manga, along with the arts. Each issue features an unprecedented interview with One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda, who has always been extremely dedicated to the work. In one snippet, Oda reveals that he didn't want to know about dating and relationships when he started writing One Piece. All this to keep his full focus on his work. However, even with all the work he had with One Piece, even with the work gaining notoriety, allowing Oda to have assistants to help him with the manga, whether drawing backgrounds or even putting the effects of the fights after Oda finished designing the characters, it turned out that Oda ended up getting married and consequently had a daughter. I'm not claiming that this made Oda change his opinion about whether or not to have relationships with One Piece, but it's interesting to know that at the beginning, he didn't care as much about girlfriends as the characters within his work. But as the time went on, this has been changing, just like in your life, and it reminds me of Kishimoto, the author of Naruto. The same has already been said that he had no skill in relationships and that his manga, Naruto, was in fact a fighting anime, a pure shonen. But as Naruto was having a great appeal not only from young boys but also from girls, Kishimoto then decided to introduce romances within his manga. But this ended up creating a lot of conflicts. He replied in an interview that his wife was furious at how things ended in relation to the couples he made. When the Naruto manga and anime finally finished publishing, some fans were furious that Kishimoto had married Naruto to Hinata instead of Sakura, who was his childhood sweetheart. These two anime novels have always been a big controversy within Naruto. After all, the main character was in love with Sakura for most of the story. the decision to make Naruto marry Hinata was so controversial that not even the author's own wife approved it. I hadn't realized all this controversy. To be honest, I almost caused a rift in my own house too, because my wife was really upset that Naruto married Hinata and not Sakura. My wife complained a lot to me about this decision, and so I had to try to defuse the bomb by explaining to her that my inspiration for Hinata was her, Kishimoto said during a rare interview at New York Comic-Con. According to Masashi Kishimoto's editor, this decision went wrong, especially with the Naruto producers who worked at the studio Pierrot at the time. Interestingly, Naruto's infatuation with Sakura kind of fades after she declares herself to him, asking Naruto to give up trying to rescue Sasuke back to Konoha. So to tidy things up, Kishimoto decides to write the movie, the last which would be the story that in an attempt would give some weight to Naruto and Hinata's relationship. But even after the movie, it was clear that Kishimoto shouldn't have involved romance in an anime. Shonen, even more in his case. After all, he said he was terrible at creating relationships. That is, my dear pirate, as cool as it is to have these relationships with One Piece, Oda has to be very careful so that the same doesn't happen to his work. Otherwise, it can bring a lot of negative reviews to One Piece, even more so now that we're getting into your final part. But now you may ask yourself, so the best thing to do is not build any relationships on One Piece? Well, it's not that. In fact, Oda is a better writer and storyteller than Kishimoto, so even if he develops some romance within One Piece, and those romances don't turn out great, well, I believe it would be impossible to get any worse than the ones we saw in Naruto. After all, Oda has already created at least a few couples and the way it's happening without being forced. In the end, it may be very good. As I already mentioned, Sanji and Nami have everything to form a perfect couple at the end of One Piece, but we have to remember Luffy and Boa Hancock too. Both are the typical anime couple where the man is completely into fights, and is a bit naive, and the woman is very strict, but is very sentimental too. And the coolest thing about this couple is that both fight, both are facing problems. Unlike Goku and Chi-Chi or Naruto and Hinata, Luffy and Hancock will form a couple of fighters, even though they both have many aspects of a common couple from a shonen anime. We saw this in Marineford, Amazon Lily, and even in the film Stampede. So I believe that yes, we can have romance and relationships in One Piece. They are already happening, but it has to be done well. And I think the comic tone that Oda gives to his characters makes these couples not sound forced. Of course, he could create a love trio, who knows, making Nami or even Vivi feel a certain jealousy of Luffy and his relationship with Hancock. This would serve to further emphasize the feelings of all the characters, but nothing more besides that alone would be enough. If we could see the same thing that happened in the case of Naruto, Hinata, and Sakura. But now I want to know your opinion about everything that we commented here today. Will we have a couple formed from the run to the end of One Piece? Will we have a love triangle? But of course, if you made it this far, it's because you like the content, so it doesn't hurt to subscribe to our channel and become one more member of our fleet, my dear sailor. And of course, do not forget to press the like button. That helps a lot in spreading the video and the channel. So help us to become the largest fleet of pirates here on YouTube, okay? A big hug for everyone, and until the next video,